Welcome to the Awaken, Heal, and Thrive podcast. I'm Benjamin Bernstein, and today's episode is called The Law of One with Aaron Maret. This episode is sponsored by my book, the #1 Amazon bestseller called Instant Divine Assistance, your complete guide to fast and easy spiritual awakening, healing, and more. Just go to Amazon, search for Instant Divine Assistance, or click the link in the show notes. I publish both audio and video versions of Awaken, Heal, and Thrive, so take your pick. The video versions are on my YouTube channel called Benjamin Bernstein Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to Awaken, Heal, and Thrive wherever you get it, and if you have not already, be sure to click the link in the show notes for a free chance to win a full year of my Awakening Plus online membership. That's a $189 value, and I announce a new winner every month. In fact, I announce our July 2023 winner later in this episode. Keep your ears peeled if you've entered. I'm dropping new episodes of Awaken, Heal, and Thrive twice per month around the 9th and 23rd. So without further ado, here is my interview with Aaron Maret. He is one of the people behind TOTOH, the Temple of the Open Heart, and he's also a deep dive studier of the Law of One. And most of our discussion today is going to be about diving into the Law of One. We're going to assume that people may not know the first thing about this or even what the heck is the Law of One, but Aaron's going to break it down for newbies and help you understand some of the really life-transforming wisdom it shares. And he'll also let you know about this wonderful organization he and his partner BJ have launched called TOTOH, the Temple of the Open Heart, and how it's supporting people in their spiritual journeys too. So welcome, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you, Benjamin.
Yeah. So just to start, do you want to give people just a quick sense of how you got involved with the Law of One, maybe a tiny bit about you so they can get to know this wonderful person I'm talking to?
Sure, that sounds fine. So, I'm a bit of a independent spiritual seeker and have been for, I don't know, a good over a decade, I would say. And so I'm always interested in finding out what are some really bright sources of spiritual teachings and information and guidance as, I try to figure out what's going on, what am I here for? What am I really, what's at the basis of my experience? And so that journey led me through all sorts of really finding wonderful teachings. And then I think it was in 2014 or so, I came across the Law of One. I think I had heard of it before, but hadn't really gotten deeply into it. And I started reading it. And as soon as I started reading it, I was like, oh, this resonates on a very deep level for me. And I couldn't get enough of it. It came out. There was 5 books, and I made it through all 5 books pretty quickly. And as I was reading it, I just knew that this is a part of my path. This is a part of what I'm here to do, to help other people connect with the material. And it just resonated as truth to me. So ever since then, I've kind of taken it as a fairly central teaching in all the teachings and people I consider teachers, who brought forward the Law of One and the Law of One material have kind of found their way pretty centrally into my cosmology. And so then I think it was 2016, of course, we started the Law of One study group because you hosted it at your house over the years. And we had a really strong group in Asheville come together and study weekly and go through the material. And it has turned out that it's a really powerful way to gather people around such a inclusive philosophy, spiritual philosophy of oneness. We're all one, and we're all making our way back to the Creator. And that was a really empowering teaching and lesson that people really seem to, vibrate with in Asheville. And so over the years, we found a growing sense of community around that study. And in 2019, my partner BJ and our friend Red founded a church organization called Temple of the Open Heart, and we've been slowly guiding and stewarding that creation for the past 4 years, and have experimented with different offerings through that organization. We currently have an online membership. Well, it's both online and some in person, but people all over the world are able to join that. And we offer weekly study of the Law of One, and we also offer other study groups. We've studied Walter Russell's Secret of Light, and BJ is now running a weekly study group for Rupert Spira's book, Being Myself. And we do a monthly in-person gathering. So there's a variety of things we're doing through that organizations, and folks can check all that out on TOTOH.org, TOTOH.org, to see more about that.
Sweet. And the Law of One is channeled material, right?
Correct.
Do you want to kind of give people a little background on how the channeling actually happened?
Yeah, I think it's probably really helpful to do so because there are, of course, lots of people channeling. There's been lots of channeled books and writings and different teachings that come through a channeled format over the years. And from what I can tell, the Law of One is a pretty unique channeling situation. In other words, the energetics and the specifics of what was going on in the channeling is somewhat different than some of the other channeled material out there. And it took place in the early 80s, and the channeling was organized by a group called LL Research, or Love and Light Research, who were based out of Kentucky. And they had actually been practicing meditation and channeling for a number of years to kind of set the field, set the tone for preparing for what happened in 1981 when they first made contact with an entity known as Ra, who is the same entity. Say
that's
again?
RA. That's RA, like the Egyptian.
RA, yep. And it's the same entity that most people will have an association with Egypt and the pantheon of the Egyptian gods. Ra did have an involvement in Earth history in ancient Egypt a long time ago. And so in 1981, when Jim and Don and Carla, who were the three main folks at LL Research, were getting ready for a standard channeling session, they got a surprise guest who was this new figure named Ra, and they began a steady contact with this entity named Ra. And what was unique about it was that Ra is actually a fairly advanced soul, or a group of souls. In fact, it's a whole planetary collective of souls. And a lot of the channeling sources, the folks on the other side who are offering the information, typically are from either a fourth or a fifth density energetic vibration. And Ra is at a late sixth density energetic vibration. And so they're a little further along the path of spiritual, the spiritual evolution path than we are. They're quite advanced. And so that makes it difficult for them to make contact with us third density beings, because they have a very, very narrow band transmission. They transmit in a very subtle way. And so the primary person who was bringing through the channel was Carla Ruckert. And she happens to have a makeup in her mind body spirit complex that allows her to be an advanced channel. And she would go into trance, and Ra would transmit their message through her directly. And so it wasn't as though they were speaking to Carla and Carla was translating, hearing the message of Ra and then translating through her own words. In fact, Carla was in a trance state, and Ra was able to speak directly using her vocal cords and her body to speak their message. And that's a fairly unique channeling situation. And the other thing that made it possible was that there was three people in the room when the channeling was happening, and their harmony as a group of three and their love for each other made a very strong metaphysical container that made the contact possible. And they endured in those contacts for I think it was about 3.5 years, up 4 years, and they had a total of 106 sessions with Ra. And over the course of that time, Ra was able to explicate the philosophy that is their primary teaching of all is one, the Law of One. And that includes some pretty interesting depictions of the cosmic plan and of soul evolution as we experience it here on Earth.
Wow, great overview. I noticed you stuck in a little bit of Law of One jargon there, mind, body, spirit complex. So why don't you break down that term and tell us how that's a taste of kind of how Ra speaks sometimes?
Yeah, that's a great thanks for catching that. It is a little bit of a jargony term. Although I think for a lot of people, it won't be difficult to kind of, translate or make sense of that, because we do, in a lot of spiritual systems, we understand that as humans, of course, we have a body. We aren't our bodies. We have a body. And we have this incredible, mental capacity that is our mind. And we also have a spiritual dimension. And so from Ra's perspective, those three aspects are the three primary aspects of what we work with as we are experiencing life, and as we're seeking the creator, and as we're evolving. We of course use our body to move around and sense, and have interface with the physical reality. And then our mind is what we use to think and to process our experiences. And our spirit is more of like what connects us to our source. It's that invisible portion of us that connects us all to each other and to the creator. And so they call, instead of calling us people or humans, they refer to us as mind, body, spirit complexes. And it's very technical, right? It's a little bit more difficult to say that. But in a lot of their transmissions, they use these fairly technical and very precise words, instead of what we might use colloquially to refer to ourselves and to different aspects of the creation. They'll use kind of more technical terms. And the reason they do that is they're really trying to point to the truth, and really help us see beyond the illusion, what's known as the illusion, of the solely materialist reality that that it feels like we're in. Mm-hmm. There's more to it, they say.
Yeah. Let me I'm trying to think through the perspective of someone who's just first now encountering the law of one. Let me do a little stage setting. So I know that the law of one has been around for decades, obviously. And do you have a rough sense of about how many people are studying the material globally now? Even a rough sense of just how far it's getting around these days?
I could take a guess. I do know that there was a big spike actually in 2020, mm-hmm. in the readership of at least there's an online website called lawofone.info. Mm-hmm. And that's a volunteer project by a fellow who makes the material available for free. And in 2020, there was a spike in traffic to that website. So maybe because a lot of people found themselves with a lot of extra time on their hands, they were quarantining, or or just seeking to find answers for all the confusion in the world. There was a pretty big spike in 2020, and there has been a big, I would say, people are being turned on to it. So whether it's through the llresearch.org website, which is the website for the group who originally brought the channeling through, who are still active, or through buying the books, or through lawofone.info, there is a large growth of readership. And I'd probably guess that there's maybe, probably in the hundreds of millions of people who are reading it.
Hundreds of millions?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not just fringe material. This is out there in a pretty strong way then.
It's getting pretty strong. I mean, even in 2014, when I first read it, if I was to try to, talk to people, hey, have you heard of Law of One? I would rarely find somebody who was like, yeah, I know that material. Yeah. But now it's different. It's changed even just in the last, 9 or 10 years. So there's been a big uptick in how many folks are turning on to this source of teaching.
Cool. Another question some of our audience might be having as well. This stuff was channeled back in the 80s. Things have changed so radically and so much. Is this stuff even still relevant? What would you say to that question?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a mostly yes and maybe a somewhat no. There's two parts to my answer. Okay. The mostly yes is Ra says very clearly that their mission, like their purpose, what they say, like why are they even around Earth? Why are they making themselves available to teach what they're teaching? They are a humble messenger of the Law of One. That's how they describe themselves. And the Law of One is the core of what they're here to share. And that message, that teaching is timeless. It is relevant to spiritual seekers everywhere in the universe at any time. As soon as we become conscious beings, that message is going to be a helpful perspective to contemplate in a time, and then that's a timeless way. That's a universal truth and a universal teaching and a universal perspective. And so that will never, sort of become dated. That message will never become dated. It's as evergreen as it gets.
Sweet.
And as in their conversations with the group, when they were going through their channeling sessions, they would get into more kind of historically local topics. They would talk about Earth history. They would talk about some things that were going on, in the 1900s, and there's some parts of that may not be as interesting or as relevant. But even that, I think, is pretty interesting to contemplate some of the alternative perspectives that they bring through that have to do with Earth history that aren't really a part of our standard tech books that we learn in our schools. And I think it can be valuable to contemplate some of the alternative information that they bring through in that portion of the teachings. And what Rob would say was that's transient material. And they have this sort of metric of like, if it's not relevant, if it's not going to be relevant 10,000 years from now, then it's not relevant to us. We don't care to talk about it.
Yeah. They'll do it grudgingly, but only because they were asked, right?
Right. That's right.
So
they're more interested in those timeless pieces.
Yeah, for sure. Also, some of our audience might be wondering, well, all very well and good, but why should I bother even continuing with this, episode? How is it going to help me to know this material? Can you just give us a few quick bullet points of ways in which a person's life might be demonstrably improved by, connecting with this material?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I will say off the bat that there's a phenomenon that Ra teaches about, that some souls who are on Earth have incarnated here actually from another planet and who've come to be of service at this time. And they call those souls wanderers. And a lot of people who make their way into, to discovering the law of one might be wanderers. And they say specifically that they give the message to help wanderers. It's very relevant for native Earth souls as well. So, there's kind of two groups that might find themselves learning about the law of one and wondering if it's for them or not. And for both groups, there's some pretty deep, messages for them that if they resonate, it seems worthwhile to continue checking it out. And that's the key, I would say to folks. If they hear these ideas, they hear these concepts, maybe they read the first session to check it out themselves. If it resonates, that's the main key. If people find an inner yes to like discovering more, that's what I would recommend folks pay attention to. And if it doesn't resonate, that's totally fine. It's not for everybody. This isn't necessarily going to be material that does resonate for everybody, or at least in the beginning, I would say. So check for resonance.
Yeah. And I remember Ra, I've been through the material more than once with our study group. And I remember Rob very clearly saying, do not believe anything here just because we're saying it. Test it. Don't take this as, gospel truth. Check it for resonance with your own life. Believe or not believe anything you like. I love the take the best and leave the rest kind of approach that they give as they channel.
Yeah.
What would you say, is there, if you could say the one way my life has been made significantly better because of the law of one material, something in the teaching that really changed my life significantly, what would that thing be, would you say?
It's a really good question. I would say reading what Ra has to teach has helped me gain a little bit of more mature perspective on my spiritual path and my spiritual journey. And most specifically, I used to feel a pressure to wake up to the truth and to get my spiritual work done and become enlightened and be the best version of myself, as quickly as possible and get it all done in this lifetime. And, I need to wake up and I still feel pretty driven as a student. And I still feel interested in growth, and I really strive to transform and do my inner work and wake up as much as I can. But Ra teaches a perspective that, our journey as souls through what they call the octave is a profoundly rich and long journey. It's a galactic journey that we're on. We all spark off from the creator, and we go through these densities of what they call densities of consciousness. And there's all these different lessons. And it starts in the first density where it's all about the elementals and the mineral life. And then in second density, it's biological life. And here we are in third density, which is 75,000 years long. And it's all about making the choice, choosing the positive or the negative path. And it continues on beyond here for millions and millions and millions and millions of years into the higher densities. And it just helped me realize, oh, okay, this is not a one-shot, one lifetime thing. And that's a part of the design. And it took the pressure off, honestly, for me. It helped me kind of relax into it. And in some ways, it helped me be maybe a little bit more firm and committed in my path, because it'll take as long as it takes, and I feel confident that I'm connected to the universe. I'm connected to my creator. And it's mysterious sometimes. I don't always know that directly. But Ra's teachings just shares that perspective of it's all one, we're all connected, in such a clear way that it helped me relax into that perspective and feel more, okay, I'm in it for the long haul. I'll do the best I can in this lifetime. I know I'm coming back again, whether it's here on Earth or somewhere else. And it just helped me kind of take a long view perspective on what I'm up to here. And it helped me kind of settle in.
So that sounds like it relieves a lot of stress and anxiety and helps you just be more calm, just knowing I have as many times as I need to get to the ultimate destination kind of idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good restating of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that's also one of the perspectives that really helped me in studying the material. I boil it down to the game is rigged and everybody wins. Because if I understand the teachings correctly, Ra says once you get to mid-sixth density, whether you chose the path of light or the path of darkness, they just go back to oneness again. And the only way forward to the finish line is to go back to unity. So regardless of how angelic or how despotic you were, at the end, you're back to union. And that's literally the only destination, because it's all God and all of it's going to come back to oneness when the universe wraps up. And so it's like everyone's guaranteed to make it back to oneness. There's literally nowhere else to go, is my understanding. And that to me was a huge relief too, saying, wow, no matter how unfair it may appear in an individual lifetime or at a given moment in history, to know that, these humans are just these blips of, incarnation, there's so many of them, beyond just that one incarnation. And ultimately it's all going to work out, is a great relief for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is it's so empowering. It's such an empowering teaching. And it really comes down to every soul has everything they need to take themselves all the way home. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean we don't, that teachers aren't valuable. Certainly that's not the case, but we each have this part of ourselves that Ra calls the higher self. And it's with us in every moment. And it's basically, from Ra's teaching, it's this future version of ourselves. It's literally this version of ourselves that is very close to the end of their journey in this, in sixth density, late sixth density. And they turn back towards us, and it's like this inner guru. It's like we each have this part of ourselves who's already almost finished the whole journey and kind of knows everything that we're going through in the most intimate possible way. And if we can just quiet our minds and we can just allow ourselves to tune into our own intuition and our own inner voice, quiet inner voice, we can gain the most valuable teaching that we need in any moment from ourselves, from our own inner life or inner planes. We also have teachers, spiritual guides and teachers on the inner planes that we can connect with. But one of those, maybe the most important of those teachers, is ourselves. And it's just so empowering. It's just such an empowering, you don't need to go outside of yourself to find the truth. You don't need to go outside of yourself to find healing. In fact, it all really happens within us. And it's just a very empowering perspective.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I'd like to share a little bit about, I should, in all fairness, answer the question I asked you. What's the one way the law of one has most profoundly impacted you? And it's on a theme we've already touched on, which is the whole idea of good and evil. And please, I know you've studied the material a lot more than me, so if I get any of this wrong, please correct me. But the way, again, Raw in its very particular phrasing, instead of saying good and evil, it says service to self and service to other. A service to self person. Then I love the way Raw phrases it says, all beings serve the creator. A service, well, you and I would be a service to other person where we want everyone to come out well, kind of a win-win vibe. A service to other person sees the divine in everything, in everyone. Every ideally you want to just perceive divinity everywhere all the time. But a service to self person only sees divinity in themselves and doesn't perceive divinity around them. So anything around them, therefore, can be manipulated, taken advantage of, abused, and it doesn't really matter. It's all just collateral damage to them. I don't care what happens to the things I interact with as long as I come out all right, And if I understand the teachings correctly, like you said, the whole point of this third density or human level experience is choose that path of service to self or service to other. And for most of my life, I said, oh my God, like my father, for example, chose not to believe in God because he said no God would allow the Holocaust, right? So how could a worthwhile divine being allow such horrible things to happen here on earth? And the law of one says, well, some people here are choosing the path of darkness purposefully. That is their chosen path. It is a valid choice. You get to graduate earth on the path of service to self. Although I think Ross says about 90% choose service to other, about 10% service to self.
That's right.
And those are valid paths. And what I love about it is that in the service to self people serve a valuable purpose for the service to other folks because they catalyze them. They're always trying to take advantage of any weakness the people on the path of love and light are doing. And that's our goad to recognize, okay, I've got a wound that needs healing or a consciousness that needs expanding or a power that needs to step into so that dark being can't mess with me anymore. And didn't Ross say that there was a prior universe where Earth was all a paradise and all the humans just lollygagged around because it was so great? And I said, well, they're kind of making a bottleneck here. We need to, next time around, we need to put some service to self people in there to kind of prod them along. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, basically, except it wasn't an alternative or prior universe. In fact, it was a part of the Milky Way galaxy in its earlier, like the solar systems that came maybe, I'm going to say billions of years ago that are closer towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy. They had not yet, those galaxies were not yet operating with the spiritual technology of what we know of as the veil of forgetting. The veil that is the mechanism that makes it so that when we're born, we don't remember our past lives. We don't remember our spiritual nature. We don't remember our interconnectedness. And, earlier in this galaxy, that had not yet been thought of by the Logos, by the being that creates the galaxies and the suns. And in the third density experience of those solar systems, everything was quite peaceful, but it was quite bland as well. There wasn't a lot of contrast of experience, and souls weren't moving through third density very quickly at all. Souls were just reincarnating and reincarnating and reincarnating because there was no impulse there was no drive to seek, because it was very peaceful and it was a very pleasant and comfortable experience, but there wasn't a drive upward. There wasn't a drive to seek and know the creator in a more full way. And so there was some logoi, which are another word for the beings that that sort of are the original creators of solar systems, that invented the veil. And the veil is what allowed us to come into form in third density, not realize we're connected to one another, and in that way decide to abuse each other or to try to get over on one another. And that actually was the birth of the possibility of the negative path, the service to self path. And that was a part of our galactic experience. And it's a little bit of an advanced portion of the teaching, but there's a whole piece there about realizing, like, oh, the what makes negative or evil possible is not outside of the creator. It's not separate from the creator. It's a portion of the creator. The creator is everything. The creator is infinite, and the creator is ultimately always connected with all of its creation and all of us as portions of its own soul. And the law of one's teaching about, quote unquote, good and evil through the lens of positivity and negativity is a very unique, and from what I have seen, it's a very unique portion of the philosophy. A lot of other spiritual systems or religious systems have a different way of describing good and evil. And sometimes evil is thought of as kind of being separate from God or against God. And in Ra's teaching, it's not so much the way. It's a little bit paradoxical to get into this, and it's more advanced. But yes, I really appreciate what you say about Ra's teaching of good and evil, and how that helped me too when I learned about that.
Yeah, if I could share a personal experience, a few months back in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies, I was taken to the level of unconditional love, or at least as much of it as I could get to, because I asked, can I be more like my partner Spirit Song, please, who is just a natural being of unconditional love? And I went to this space, and it surprised me so profoundly, because, you think of love, oh, all gushy, heart chakra, warm, fuzzy kind of energy. But this was like just vast, and there was no warm, fuzzy at all, but it was just a complete acceptance of all of it. And I realized this level of consciousness, is as completely accepting as of darkness as of light, of evil as of goodness. And it was a little shocking at first to, be there, because my human self is so different. Because, I like to say that in awakening, there's paradox, because seemingly contradictory things can be simultaneously held. And for me, that means I can know that level of unconditional love where I'm embracing all without exception. And then my human self is adamantly on the path of service to other. I only want to serve the love and light. I don't want to serve the darkness in any way. And it may seem weird that I can hold both those at the same time, but I kind of get what Ra's doing with describing that phenomenon. So I just wanted to share that. I'm not trying to steal your thunder here, but it seemed like an appropriate story to share.
Oh, I love hearing from you what has impacted you positively from the material. It's great.
Oh, thank you. So my guess is, if someone is going to be intrigued by Law of One, what we've said so far will have tickled their fancy if they're open to it. What else would you tell someone who's just now being exposed to Law of One in terms of how they might enrich or benefit themselves by, learning more about it or reading some of the material?
Yeah, well, one pretty fundamental thing that Ra teaches, and it comes pretty early on. Again, I mentioned there's 106 sessions, but starting in session 4, 5, and 6, Ra gives this really condensed teaching about how we can really go about healing and balancing ourselves. And the teachings they give about healing and balancing have to do with exploring the polarities of our own minds and of our own bodies. And it's a pretty interesting teaching. It takes a little bit to understand. It's, in a way, it's quite simple, but what I find is it's just so different than our normal approach to life, that it takes a little bit to understand what they're saying. But once you get into it a bit, you realize that they're giving us a way to, again, be really empowered on our own spiritual journeys. And how do we do the healing work that allows us to experience these states of consciousness that are more unified and that are less, at odds with the people around us or the universe around us or the stories we have of God even. How do we heal those wounds or those places that we feel separated? And it's quite practical and valuable. And it comes early on in the readings. So that's something to look forward to for folks who do feel like they want to, dip their toes in a bit, is the teachings that Ra gives about healing and balancing.
Sweet. Okay, so for some reason I'm being, my understanding now is the material, it's been out for decades. All the channeling is free on the website. They can even hear the original recordings on YouTube if they want to, although it's really slow. And there are a number of print books that I think, have they put all the material into audiobooks now as well?
That's a great question. I haven't listened to the audiobooks, but I'm pretty sure they have. I'm pretty sure that yes. And Jim is the one who does the audio on those. And I'm pretty sure they're all made available on Audible.
And Jim is the last remaining person alive of the original 3 who did the channeling.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's, I'll just speak from my own experience, having done deep dive study for several years of this material. It's just mind boggling. If you want something that'll just blow your mind open, like the very best science fiction can do, except it's real, at least I believe it is. It's extraordinary, and it can make sense of a lot of things that you think, well, life seems so unfair, or what, that makes no sense. And this material um, can help give understanding of how the universe. What I like to say when I summarize it for people, it's the best explanation I've ever seen of life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah.
Just like the big picture overview.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll add to that the two things that that come through in the teaching that do that give the big picture are there's two maps that Ra describes. There's the map of the galactic journey that all souls take, all consciousness takes, and that's the densities.
Mm-hmm.
And there are these 7 stages of consciousness learning these very distinct lessons. And all galaxies in the entire universe go about the evolution of consciousness through these same phases. It's a universal map, a universal pattern of the evolution of consciousness. So it's this incredibly helpful orienting frame or map of like, how does life in the universe, everywhere in the universe, progress? And so that's a really helpful, orienting piece. And then the map of each of us as mind, body, spirit complexes, we have these nested energy bodies. And it's well known as the chakras and the 7 chakra system specifically, which of course is a very ancient system. That information has been on Earth for a very long time. And Ra just kind of gives a slightly maybe updated take on it. It's completely congruent with the Vedic teachings of the chakras, but they just give a modern, English language take on the chakra system and what that really means. And they say it fairly simply of what are these different energy centers in our bodies? What are they about? What are the lessons that each of us might be exploring? How do those relate to the chakra systems, and how do we use that system, that part of ourselves, that energetic part of ourselves, in the course of our spiritual journey, in the course of our spiritual evolution? So that map of our energy bodies and the chakras is also very helpful, very orienting.
So what else do you feel like it would be helpful for a newbie to understand about the law of one before we shift to some other topics?
Well, the final thing that I think is really interesting is Ra talks about how when a person kind of becomes interested in or makes contact with the mystery, the mysterious quality of life, these things that can't be understood through, the sort of scientific rational frame. It's a very valuable frame. The scientific rational frame is very valuable, but there are some things that just are completely outside of that paradigm that we can make contact with. And when we do that, we're basically, we're tuning with the infinite. We're tuning with the true nature of the creator. And that can happen through, some people have UFO sightings. Some people have, contact with entities who are non-physical, either through dreams or in the waking state. There's all sorts of ways that people will have these experiences that are mysterious and that they don't know how to make sense of in the conventional frame. And to become interested in that and to lean into the mystery is to begin to attune to the creator itself and to that infinite dimension of the creator. And I found that really interesting.
Actually, as you were saying that, there's one more topic I'd love you to address on law of one. At least one more, we'll see. And you touched earlier on the idea of the wanderer, the person who is, I would phrase it, here on Earth on special assignment. They're not native here, but they're helping out. And could you talk a little bit about that, especially in the context of what the law of one says? This is a very powerful graduation period, where it's actually when a lot of souls are ideally supposed to be wrapping up their last Earth incarnation, moving from our 3rd density here on to 4th density, the next major level up, and why there's such a flood of wanderers here, and how Earth is maybe a little behind schedule at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let me just take a step back first and say, for context, that Earth's situation is a bit unique in that there are souls incarnating here, and I'm not even talking about wanderers, I'm just talking about third density souls incarnating here who are coming from 16 distinct planetary origins. And that's a fairly unique situation. So right at the get-go, 75,000 years ago, Earth took in or absorbed all the souls that were incarnating on Mars. Mars had some catastrophe happen where through war and bellicose action, they had destroyed their atmosphere, and they were no longer able to incarnate on Mars. And in order to continue their spiritual journey, they needed to go to a new planet that could support their life. And so, in cooperation with some higher members of this organization called the Confederation of Planets in service of the Infinite Creator, and that's an organization that Ra is a member of, a different member in that organization that was not Ra assisted the Mars souls and brought them to Earth right at the beginning, right as Earth was coming into its third density cycling. So self-aware life, human life. And that, brought all these souls who weren't native to Earth here to be born here and continue journeying in third density. Well, that was a lot of souls. That made up actually half of the human population at that time. And then there were souls from other planets who had not made the graduation when their planets finished their density. They had not quite polarized sufficiently to move on into fourth, and they came here instead to continue the third density lessons. So there's 16. What Ra says is there's 3 major and 13 minor planetary influences who have sent souls to Earth. And so all those souls are cycling, and it creates a condition where you have all these different origins of souls, and it makes it quite difficult for us as a whole planetary entity to unify our seeking, to unify our sensibilities and our, what are we up to as a planetary self, as a planetary being, as we try to wake up to our oneness as a planet, as a sort of like, as this Gaian body. It's been a bit difficult to do that. There's a lot of warring. There's a lot of conflict between nations and races. And part of that has to do with our soul origins. And so we have this condition as Earth is approaching the end of its third density cycling, where a lot of souls are actually kind of caught up in what Ra calls the sinkhole of indifference. And that's when a soul doesn't sufficiently choose positive or negative. It just kind of like spins back and forth between those two poles and is kind of muddied in the middle, the gray middle. And, most of these souls are folks who eventually will choose the positive path. These are good people who are generally interested in caring for others, but just get caught up in the day-to-day, needing to think about their own material welfare and comfort. And for one reason or another, just kind of get caught up in some of the minor conflicts of being a separate soul and don't make the choice. And so we're approaching the end of third density where eventually the window will close. No more souls will be able to come in who are interested in the lessons of third density, and it will be a fully fourth density experience. And so higher density civilizations who are on the positive path are sending delegates here as wanderers to try to help the situation, to try to come down, fully become a human by being born into a human experience. They fully become a member of Earth and are completely Earthlings at that point. And then their duty is to try to lighten the load, try to raise the vibrations of the planet, bring those qualities of fourth density and fifth density, which are love and wisdom, sixth density, which is the balance of love and wisdom, or the knowledge of oneness, and try to help increase the possibility that souls will get their work done, make the choice, polarize sufficiently, and join the next wave of fourth density on Earth, which what Ra says is that Earth's fourth density will be a positive experience. So only those souls who are interested in the positive path will continue to incarnate here, and all those souls who have chosen the negative path will go to a planet who is solely negative. So there are some planets who are fourth density negative, and their entire experience is about becoming really good at war and empire and control and, you know, all the negative stuff.
The Game of Thrones planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And that was a beautiful, I'm trying to imagine myself as a newbie hearing this, and I think you expressed it coherently and clearly. I love that about you, how well you're able to communicate so simply and clearly and even eloquently.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, and remember, Benjamin, there is that video that BJ and I, with Red's help, put together. It's on YouTube. If I don't know if it's easy, but if
I'll link to it.
If anybody, you know, who watches this kind of wants like the full, you know, we do a 2-hour description of the law of one. It's very condensed and you know, it's a lot to make it through, but you're welcome to link that or, you know, share that with your,
just send me the
viewers.
link after we're done and I'll include that in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll do.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay. Any other thing we could talk about law one for, days, but anything else you feel would be super helpful to share now before we touch on some of the other stuff you're doing?
Yeah, there's one more topic that I think it would be helpful to bring up, which is the UFO topic.
Okay.
Actually, Don Elkins was the one who founded the group, the LL Research Group. And he was just a dedicated seeker. He was an intrepid student of the paranormal. So all of these things were happening, UFO sightings, UFO landings, contactees, abductees. He was interested in these things back in the 60s, starting in the 60s. And it was really, his interest in the UFO topic actually kind of was the doorway for him into some of these deeper spiritual topics. And I think that's true for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole UFO dimension to the teachings. Ra talks a lot about through the sessions. They'll through Don's prodding and asking questions, they teach about sort of the deeper nature of the UFO phenomenon. So sightings in the sky, landings, and I bring it up because it's current events. There's this this pretty big resurgence right now in the mainstream of the UFO issue, now known as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the high level of government, all of a sudden, people in Congress and people high level military folks are starting to disclose the fact that yes, indeed, these phenomena are real. They've been taking place for a long time. We have crashed material. There's all these things that used to seem really fringe, mm-hmm. and were marginalized from a mainstream perspective. We're marginalized as crackpot, and that's changing. So a lot of people are going to find themselves trying to grapple with, like, wait, what's going on? UFO, huh? And and there's a perspective that comes through the raw contact, the law of one, that can help orient folks to it, because in fact, it's kind of complicated, because some of the sightings that folks have are of positive craft. Some mm-hmm. are not some are of negative craft. Mm-hmm. Some are physical craft. Some are thought form craft. Mm. And some are from Earth. Some are not ET at all. They're from here. Huh. And so, it's a lot to sort through. And, I try to share the perspective of, like, don't jump to conclusions. If you do find yourself trying to wade your way through these questions of what is the UFO phenomenon, don't jump to conclusions. And there's a lot that you can learn through what Ra says about it that I think can be really orienting and helpful and balancing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know in your TOTOH, Temple of the Open Heart, you're also studying 2 other deep spiritual teachers. Do you want to just touch briefly upon those 2 and the main juice you are getting from those, and why you're including them in the TOTOH curriculum? Yeah,
totally. Okay, so a lot of people will have heard of this term non-dualism and the non-dual teachings. And, non-dualism is basically just another way to say oneness. Mm-hmm. So oneness is the positive expression of we're all one. Everything is one. Non-dualism is saying things are not two. There is no two. So there are 2 ways of saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. And they're also both expressions of what is called the perennial philosophy. The perennial philosophy is like, what is the natural truth of the universe? What is the natural intrinsic truth of reality? And any system of study or of practice, spiritual practice, that seeks to know that directly is a portion of the perennial philosophy. So the Hermetic traditions of Hermes and the teachings of Hermes, Tantra. There's lots of systems. Taoism. There's lots of systems that exist that I would say are a part of this perennial philosophy. Rosicrucianism. Mm-hmm. And so really that's what we're interested in the Temple of the Open Heart, is what we call open source spirituality. So we're on the one hand, we're very deeply influenced by the teachings of the Law of One, and they do end up kind of being fairly central to our, to the material that we study. But we don't make that into a dogma. We don't make it into like, this is the truth. We really value a spirit of critical thinking, skepticism, and every spiritual seeker is going to resonate differently with different teachings, and we really honor and value that. So we also have been including other perspectives, other teachings that I would say are a part of the perennial philosophy. So the ones that we love, BJ and I, and who are doing most of the facilitating of these online groups, are the cosmogony of Walter Russell. He is a fascinating American polymath who had this profound mystical experience, and was able to turn his mystical experience into this very comprehensive teaching about how the Creator creates the universe out of light, how everything is made of light, how we're made of light, everything is connected through light. And he gives this very detailed teaching about light and how light forms all matter. So it's a bit of a mix between the science of light and the philosophy of oneness. And it's very congruent with Ra's teachings. And so there's a famous book, or one of his most well-known books is The Secret of Light. And so we made our way through that book and recorded those sessions. They're all available on our YouTube channel for free. So that was one.
I'll link to those as well.
Great. And then there's a teacher who BJ and I are both really positively impacted by, is a modern, maybe an idealist or a non-dualist, who's named Rupert Spira. And he is just a gem of a teacher. He's so capable of pointing to the non-dual teachings, the non-dual truth, in a way that's very accessible, very, very down to earth. And he's written a few books, and they're short and easy and lovely reads. And we're making our way through one of them called Being Myself. And all of our study group sessions are recorded and put on our YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to check any of those out, you can.
So the live sessions are for members only, but you're then freely distributing the recordings.
That's right.
It's very generous of you.
Yeah.
Cool.
The purpose of TOTOH, Temple of the Open Heart, is we call it positive evolution. So of course we, everyone, who's in the organization and in the leadership, we obviously consider ourselves to be on the positive path. We have chosen the positive path of seeking. So we're interested in serving others. We're interested in unity and love and truth and serving that. And we're trying to energize the maximum success of Earth's journey as it completes its third density cycle. So we call that positive evolution. So we recognize we're all on this evolutionary journey together. Earth is in an evolutionary journey, and our mission is to empower the positive timeline, to try to help as many positive seekers as possible, to try to help the success of Earth making that transition in as positive and maximally beneficial way as possible. So positive evolution is our game. And, we try to we try to bring our passions, our gifts, what's unique to us, forward and express those in ways that can help others as much as possible.
Wow, it's beautiful. So thank you for that beautiful summary. So if someone wanted to check out TOTOH, what's your like bullet list of here's the things that can make your life better if you get hooked up with TOTOH somehow?
Well, we have a, like I mentioned before, we have a membership. It's called TOTOH Collective. And for folks who are really interested in having more contact with other positive seekers, can do so. So we have a Telegram channel that's for members only, where we have a variety of topics, including studying the law of one, and all the study groups have their own topic thread. And that's a way for people to, be connected and be able to talk with others who are on a positive spiritual journey, and, just have the experience of community. Because a lot of folks where they're at what we've learned is they feel isolated. They might be drawn to some of these esoteric teachings. They don't have a lot of contact with folks in their day-to-day lives that share that with them. So for a lot of people, they can feel isolated. They don't necessarily feel resonant with maybe the spiritual communities that are available where they are, which often is like churches and more conventional, communities, which are wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. But some folks won't necessarily resonate with those, maybe the more dogmatic approach of churches. And so people feel lonely. So we're trying to make a space for people who are really open-minded on a positive spiritual path and are looking for folks who share that sensibility, can come together. So, if you go to the website, TOTOH.org, TOTOH.org, there's information about the collective there. And we make the memberships as accessible as possible, slide and scale. And so, we're not doing it for profit. We're just doing it to try to help in our own little small way.
Yeah. And I'll just, if people are watching my podcast, that might be resonant with me. I, have known most of these TOTOH people for well over a decade, and they're people I feel very close and resonant with. And I can vouch that TOTOH would be a wonderful, if you're vibing with what Aaron is saying here and want some deeper community to study these deeper, more soul level things, I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're resonating with Aaron and what he's saying. If you're vibing with Aaron, you'll definitely vibe with TOTOH.
Thanks, Benji.
You're welcome. All right. So no more questions are coming to my mind. What else do you feel would be helpful to share here?
I mean, I sort of just want to, I don't know exactly how to encapsulate it, but I want to send out encouragement to everybody listening or watching. These times that we're living through right now can be incredibly challenging. There's a lot to be afraid of. There's a lot of big things happening in the world that seem really scary, and that are really scary. And it can feel hard to be on Earth right now. And so I just want to share some words of encouragement of, if you're here for a reason. You chose it. And they may not be readily available, because sometimes we forget. Before we incarnate, we do a lot of work to decide what the incarnation is going to be about, where we're going to be born, who our families are going to be, what kind of lessons we're going to explore. And there's a lot of work we do behind the veil. And then we're born and we forget all of that. And then we find ourselves stumbling through life, making all sorts of errors and mistakes, and, often not feeling like we're living up to our own standards. And, it can feel hard, and we can feel really lost sometimes. And so I just want to send out some words of encouragement to everybody. If you're here, you're meant to be here. You're part of the team. You have a unique gift to bring to the world, and just, stick with it and pay attention to what your joy is, what brings you into joy. What do you love? What are your passions? If you follow those will bring you to your gifts, your spiritual gifts that you're here to share with everybody. And I just encourage everyone to really pay attention to your own happiness, to your own joy, to your own peace. Seek it and give yourself permission to really pay attention to your own well-being, to your own healing process, so that you can bring forth what you came here to bring, because the earth needs us. It needs us to show up and to bring forth our unique genius. And so, yeah, it feels hard. It feels sad. I share my compassion with everyone who might be going through a rough patch. Stick with it. I love you. The universe needs you. It needs us all to be showing up. And yeah, that's what I want to share.
Again, just to remind folks, everything Aaron has mentioned is going to be linked in the show notes. The Law of One page, the link to TOTOH, the YouTube videos he's been mentioning, everything is going to be easily linked in the show notes if you want to explore this deeper. And if you do resonate, I highly recommend it. This Law of One stuff and the other things that TOTOH is teaching are really extraordinary and can be really positively life transforming. So, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for taking your valuable time and lighting up a few more people. Any final words before we wrap this episode?
Yeah, well, I just want to say to you, Benjamin, I'm honored. I really, I respect you so much. I see you standing in the world and your work as a beacon of light. You're sharing so much beauty with the world through what you're offering. And I just want to acknowledge you and honor you for everything you're doing to serve others and to bring your genius into the world in the unique ways that you do. And I just respect you so much. And I really appreciate you having me on today.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mirror everything you said back to you, except that you're not having me on today. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Aaron. It's been
You're welcome. Thank you.
On the podcast. Thanks.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Also, as I record this on July 19 of 2023, my book, Instant Divine Assistance, Your Complete Guide to Fast and Easy Spiritual Awakening, Healing, and More, has received 130 ratings on Amazon, and 84% are 5-star. In this #1 Amazon bestseller, learn how easy it can be to experience spiritual awakening within seconds just by requesting it from your higher self, quickly and permanently heal a serious challenge, even one that's caused you years of physical, emotional, or mental suffering, by delegating the work to your inner healer. Call in any kind of energy you want, anytime you want it. Heal and bless others simply by calling it in and being a hollow reed. Thrive in a new normal of harmonious living, enhanced intuition, joyous fulfillment of your responsibilities, and bliss. You can do all this and more with the Instant Divine Assistance invocations. This book gives you everything you need to master them. Plus, you get free access to guided recordings and other valuable online support that will speed up your personal evolution. For over 12 years, the IDA invocations have dramatically improved thousands of people's lives. Isn't it time you also experienced how quick and easy spiritual awakening, healing, and so much more can be? You can buy Instant Divine Assistance on Amazon for as little as $4.99. There are 3 versions: ebook, paperback, and the brand new hardcover edition. It's also available with Kindle Unlimited. Click the link in the show notes and be sure to buy the authorized copy by Benjamin Bernstein, not the illegal pirated version under another author's name. Also, the events in my Awakening Plus online membership range from bubble bath gentle to shamanically intense. They support your individual healing and awakening, as well as global spiritual awakening. We also have community-focused events where members ask questions and connect with each other. Not a member yet? Join one of our free events. 2 calls are open to the public each month. Experience how Awakening Plus can accelerate your personal evolution. Hundreds of satisfied members make up our supportive online community. Would Awakening Plus also be a good fit for you? As of July 2023, members receive these exclusive benefits. At least 9 of our monthly Zoom events are members only. Some members attend lots of live events, and some don't do any. In fact, most members prefer to experience our events when it is best for them, choosing from an archive of over 575 life-transforming experiences. Amazingly, the recorded events are just as powerful as the live ones. We even have an easy-to-use best of guide to help you choose the event that will help you most right now. There are 3 major courses so far, with more coming. There's a members helping members service. You can pair up with an accountability partner if you wish. You get constant support from the Awakening Plus group energy field, and that's not even everything. Click the link in the show notes to learn more, or go to awakeningplus.com. That's awakeningplus.com. I announced earlier that we're giving away a free membership this month. This is the announcement for that. A lot of people have entered their names. This one is Kathy with a K. In fact, this is the one whose email starts with the word Kathy. There's only one. So if that's you, Kathy, please email me, benjamin@astroshaman.com, and we will get you set up with your free 1-year membership to Awakening Plus. Congratulations. And to everybody, thank you for being here. Once again, I am Benjamin Bernstein, and we are wrapping up. Please leave me a 5-star rating, review, or comment wherever you're getting this episode so others can also awaken, heal, and thrive. And be sure to click the link in the show notes for a chance to win 1 free year of my Awakening Plus online membership. Thanks again for spending this time with me. I wish you infinite blessings.